now.
Okay, it's doing it. Thank you.
Very good. My pleasure.
Excellent. All right.
I just thank you for asking me to be here. A few of you know me, and I know you, and I have enjoyed knowing you for years. We won't tell them how many years, Lynn and Dorothy, but a bunch of them. Layering pizzazz was what the topic that was chosen for me to do. I have done this for several groups, and a lot of the authors who have been at those groups have contacted me and told me what a difference it made in their writing. How many of you write nonfiction instead of fiction? Okay. Do you do just nonfiction or both? Yeah. Okay. Good writing is good writing, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. So whenever I teach any subject to authors, I tell them that take as much as you need from the subject, because it will help you no matter what you write. The first time I taught a workshop, because this is a workshop, I hope you have paper and things to work. The first time I taught a workshop, I was going to tell them about some of my history, about how God had been with me every step of the way. And when I needed to know something, he brought someone into my life. And anyway, I asked them, why was I at the front of the room teaching? And somebody in the back held up their hands and said, I know. And I said, why? And he is a guy, and he said, because you're published and we're not. But I was wanting to encourage them about watching what God's going to do with them. But anyway, we all write in our own style and using individual methods. There is no right or wrong way to write. It's because your personality and your talents are woven into your writing. So I'm not going to say what I'm teaching is the way, but it will be another way that could help you. We've all heard about the two different styles. One is plotters, and then there's the seat of the pantsers. And usually you're a various combination of the two styles, and your writing will place you somewhere between them on the spectrum. I started out totally a pantster, and then at one point, one of the editors I had said she wanted a certain kind of information from me about the book before we started. And that I kind of learned from that wow, that helps me. That helps me. So instead of being way out here, I'm kind of like right here, but I'm not way over here. And you can figure out for yourself where you fit on the spectrum. I am going to introduce you to another way to make your manuscript sing, because your manuscript needs to grab the editor and grab the readers. And if it doesn't grab the editor, you won't get picked up by that publisher. It's wonderful when an author has plenty of time to follow the steps one at a time. I've got, let me see what, 3, 4, I think I have at least 7 steps. That 6, 7, maybe I have more than 7. Well, they're sticking together. Yeah, 6 is what, yeah, there's a 7. And each of these steps will add to your manuscript. However, if you're already published or you have signed a contract, you may not have the luxury of spending a long time on each step. So you can get your story written faster. You can learn to do this in fewer steps, either by incorporating many of them as you write your first draft, and are making fewer passes through the manuscript while incorporating more than one step at a time. For ease of understanding, I'm listing them in an order, but they can occur in any order that works best for you. Step 1, get her done. You write the first draft. That's like going back to basics in sports, such as taking a football in the locker room with NFL players, holding it up and saying, "This is a football." Well, that's what you are doing when you get the words on paper. They may need a lot of work after you've gotten them on the paper, but don't get bogged down in details or try to think of descriptions or other things. Forget about that. Just write it down. And then sometimes when I'm writing a chapter, I come to a point that I just can't picture what's happening. I have a background in drama and some radio, television things. And so I see things in my mind. I don't have words in my mind. I just see the things. And if I'm not seeing what's coming next, then I need to stop, and I just write the dialogue for the rest of the chapter. That's a skeleton for the chapter, and you finish that. Then when next time I sit down to write, I will go back over that chapter, the last chapter I wrote. And that's when I'm going through that, I'm able to add some of these details that make it a lot better. Then I have to translate what I see into words on paper. Now I'm going to give you, maybe, let's say, can you write a dialogue between 2 or 3 characters in 5 minutes, or do you need a little longer? Well, I want you to write a conversation between 2 or 3 people, just the dialogue. I recommend that, if you're on paper, I recommend that you skip at least 2 or 3 empty lines between your lines of dialogue. If you're using your laptop or your computer, you can just do it on the screen and go back and add the elements as we go along. the after you've gotten your conversation, it's just a bare conversation. He said, she said, you can use the characters' names or whatever, and then we know who's doing it. So go ahead and start writing now. So are we about finished? Is there anyone who hasn't come to a stopping place? Okay. Step 2 is to change your conversation tags to conversation beats. In case you don't know the difference, tags are like, he asked, she said, those kind of things. But you know, you can add a lot of
It says
interesting.
this meeting is being recorded, and it shows all the people's pictures again. It says by continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. And it shows leave meeting or continue.
But probably because we quit talking.
No,
Yeah,
no, they
Meg,
put me right in there.
Meg, does it give you the option to say yes?
Okay,
Yeah, just click the yes and it'll go away. And you should be fine.
But the meeting is being recorded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the meeting is being recorded, so we should be fine now. Go ahead, Lena.
All right. The conversation beats can't, you don't, because a lot of people think that tags are, nobody sees them, but I don't agree with that, because the saids and asks and that kind of thing, they really stick out when your book, it becomes an audio book. And so it's really better to use the beats. Now, this can be an action beat. It can be something the point of view person is doing. Like he tapped his pen on the rosewood desk. Okay, that's an action beat, but it also gives us information about the setting at the same time. It's action beats. It can be internal thoughts of the point of view person or what the point of view character sees. He can be staring out the window, wishing that he could go out into the spring sunlight instead of being locked up in this office talking to this his boss who he doesn't get along with. You know, you can put a lot of things in there. Now, if it's a fast moving story, you don't have to don't have to mark every change of dialogue, especially if there's only two people. Then when someone else starts speaking, you know it's not the last person that spoke. So you can get away with like doing 2 or 3 at a without marking it with a beat or a tag when it's a fast moving story. That's somebody writing a suspense novels and like they're being chased by somebody who's wanting to kill them or what, you know. You don't have to mark it as long as you say who's speaking using a beat at every 2 or 3 change of dialogue. Many of my books don't have a single conversation beat, conversation tag in them. So read your manuscript and see how much deeper you pull the reader into the emotions or actions by replacing as many conversation tags with beats as you can. And go ahead and do that now. I may try to keep speaking so it doesn't shut off again.
Lena, also, the question mark means somebody asked something.
That's right. And you don't have to say asked at all.
But we get into doing the saids and the other things, and it becomes very natural to us. When I edit for Elk Lake, that's one of the first things we go through, and people will have 20 or 30 question marks with ask.
Yeah. 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 You recently signed one of my critique people, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
You gave me glowing kudos for my editing for you.
Yes.
And I would love to be able to do that long term, but can't do it. But I
Yeah.
love our exchange.
Yes. Yes. Okay, it shouldn't take you very long to change your tags if you have. And then the step 3 is setting. I know that many of you are not as visual as I am. But we have to give the readers something to see so that they're grounded in the time period and a place. I really hate to start reading a book, especially historicals, and they don't give you a time or a place. And I'm reading going, okay, what time period is this? Okay, where are they? You know, that pulls your reader out of your story, because you want to pull your reader into the story and have all of the them to feel and see everything the point of view character sees and feels. And so we have to give the readers something to see. With dialogue, they have something to hear, but they need more than just hearing. If you have a hard time adding description, snippets can be slipped into the conversation beats. And don't make the mistake I made when I first started writing. When the characters walked into the room, I started on one side of the room and described everything I saw from one side of the POV character all the way around the room to the other side of that person. And Tracy Peterson was the editor of my first book. And she sent me a note and said, don't give me a laundry list of descriptions. And that, you know, that really woke me up to what I was doing. If you do like that and start from one side of the room and go all the way around to the other, it will bog the reader down quicker than anything. And many will consider your writing boring. And that's something you don't want anybody to consider your writing. We don't want them to think we're boring. And they'll often put the book down and not really pick it back up again. Only a real diehard reader who likes your writing will read it. Many people will skip over it, but you should put snatches and touches, phrases sprinkled into the text that give a feel of the place, but don't overload the narrative. Just give us what the point of view person would notice, and especially things that have an emotional history for that person. I mean, a woman could walk into a room and she sees the silver hairbrush that reminded her of the one her grandmother gave her when she was a little girl. I mean, there needs to be a reason, an emotional reason, why that point of view person would notice that. But you can get a lot of setting in your conversation beats. Especially if they're the internal monologue that the POV person feels. Like, yeah, go ahead and start putting setting in. A person can walk into a room and see something that gives them a bad memory, something that hurts, and that gives us more, brings us more into that person and helps us really connect. It's called deep POV. The deeper you can get into that person in your narrative and in your conversation, the more that the reader will care about that person. A lot of readers won't continue to read a book if they can't connect with the characters. For years now, Christian fiction, even Christian nonfiction, if you're using stories as to explain some points you have in your nonfiction book, stories of what happened to a person, this kind of thing, that will draw them into your book and make them care about what you're writing about. Okay, I hear some pencils and pens going. Good, good. And by the way, I will send Dorothy or somebody my notes that you can make available to them, to your members, so that they can go over again and
Yeah,
see.
that would be great. If you want to email that to me after your talk, we'd be happy to make sure that's available to everybody. Sure
Okay.
thing. Yeah,
I'll do
thank
that.
you. That's great.
I don't like to give it to them ahead of time, because then they'll be reading the notes instead of listening to what's going on. Okay, step 4 is add sensory details. You know, we have 5 or 6 senses that we experience all the time. And every scene should engage 2 or 3 of these senses. And all 5 senses should be used in the story. And according to how long if it's a short piece, maybe just one time. But for a novel, you will be using these over and over. The first sense I'm going to talk about is smell. There's all kinds of smell, good ones and bad ones, and whatever you need to help the reader become a part of the scene. If it's a mystery and they're running down between 2 buildings and there's garbage out there, well, then you would have them, choke on the smell of the garbage or whatever. See what I'm saying? You need, and then they go into the house, and a child has picked flowers for the mother, and you can smell the flowers, which brings memories to you. It brings memories to the reader, because it brings memories to the character. And then taste. This one is probably the sense that you'll use the least. But there are times in every story that you do include some. You can tell you can tell how hungry I was when I was writing a chapter according to what meals or snacks they have or whatever. Because my critique group, I have a critique group that met in my home for 25 years, over 25 years, but we've been Zooming for the last couple of years. And I'll start reading, and then somebody will say, "You were hungry, weren't you?" Because I maybe put a little too much of the taste in there, but they should be included, especially since food is so important to all of us. And we all eat 2 or 3 times a day, and our characters should eat occasionally too. And then there's the touch. There's several kinds of touching. There are textures that the character feels. Maybe a woman sits down on a couch, and it's tapestry, and she felt the tapestry that was on her grandmother's couch, and that brings emotions into the scene about her grandmother. There's also human connections, human touching, and there's even painful touching. In a bad scene, the one of the characters might get slapped by another character. Now that's a touch also. So touch can be good and it can be bad. Every rose has its thorns, you know. And then hearing, not just what the other characters say, but also the ambient sounds, both inside the room and beyond, or outside the building and beyond. I mean, you could hear cars driving by, and if it's out in the country, you could hear the lowing of the cattle when there's all kinds of ambient sounds you can include in your scene. And then sight. This is only what the POV character notices in the context of this one scene. So if you can start, see if you can add some sensory details. Some other like sensory details. You can have a character who feels things when they walk into the room because of a memory, because of what had happened to them at some point in time. And I'll go ahead and kind of move along. I don't want to take too much longer because we'll have time for questions and answers. Motivation. Step 5 is motivation. Every action, reaction, or word spoken must have motivation. And the reader will be able to tell if it's appropriate for the person in the scene, because early on, they get acquainted with these characters, and they begin to understand them, and they will know kind of how they will react and what they will do. And if it's not appropriate for that person, from what they know about that person, it will pull the reader out of the story, and you don't want to pull the reader out of the story. So check your motivations closely. Read everything any person in the book does, then ask yourself, why did he or she do that? If you can't answer that question, you should probably leave it out or build in more of a motivation for it to happen. You know, if you just say something but don't have a believable motivation for it, you'll lose your readers very often.
I hear it.
One motivation for including the information can be to reveal more of the point of view person's
Continue.
character
Oh,
development.
hey, I'm there. Thank you. Oh,
So go ahead and write yourself a note to put your motivations in. Now, step 6 is emotions. You can have characters who are not emotional, and that is a character trait, being unemotional. But for the most part, your characters are going to be emotional. They can have good emotions, they can have bad emotions, and we need to see the emotions in internal thoughts or as observed by the POV character if it's another character who's experiencing the emotions. Like the POV character could be speaking to another character, not meaning to hurt the other character, but you all know in relationships, very often the things we say or the things we do are misunderstood by the people you're with. It just happens. My husband and I will soon be celebrating 58 years of marriage. And this happens. You say something and the other person takes it wrong or something like that. And the POV character you should include visceral reactions and external reactions. The visceral includes how what's happening reveals itself in the POV character's body. Sweaty hands, a burning in your chest, churning stomach, something that what happened caused this POV person to feel that way. But do it in creative ways. In a recent chapter, I had a heroine's stomach, because I write both contemporary and historical, but I have sold more historical than I have contemporary. I had the heroine's stomach feel like hummingbirds were caught in the net of tension that stretched between 3 people within this. And actually, the hummingbirds were a link between the 3 heroines in the 3-book series. So I included them somehow in each of the books because it was a tie to tie the heroines together. And then step number 7. This is a real important one. Go deeper into the main character's POV. You can grab a reader and not let go by pulling that person into the deep places most characters like to wall off and not approach. Only in those secret places can we really get to know the person, but only give the reader glimpses. Just give them glimpses of those secret places and deeper glimpses as the book goes along. Something else will come out in that person's emotions. And until some upheaval in your story reveals the depth of those places somewhere near the end of the book. And it's secret desires. They can have secret desires that are good, and they can have secret desires that are bad. And both are equally powerful in revealing this person's character. And then there's secret hurts, ones they've never told anyone else, not even their best friend. And then they can have secret plans. And these plans could be good plans toward another person, or they can be devious plans, which really gives a lot of tension in your book. Now, the things you wrote down, are you happy with what you wrote? Any of you that wrote, are you happy with what you wrote? How much did these steps improve your conversation? Did they build a good conversation? Okay, that scene that you just wrote could be included in a future book for you. This was a workshop to help you learn something, but don't, if you've written something, keep it. There might be a time you want to use it. It's really funny. I keep pens and paper in every room in my house. I don't know if y'all do, but I do. There are pens and paper. Excuse me. And one day I was cooking, and this thought just kept going over and over in my mind. And at that time, I had not written a Western at all. And this line was, I kept thinking, that's a Western line. And I don't write Westerns, but I wrote it down on a Post-it note. And then I put it on my file cabinet in the office. And the line was, he wasn't looking for a relationship, but if he had been, that woman had strings hanging off of her so long they could really hogtie a man. That was the line. It just kept going over and over in my mind. And it was like 3 books later, I was writing a Western, which I never had dreamed I ever would. And of course, now I've written many, many Westerns, but it's in somewhere in the first 2 chapters of one of my novels. So anything that comes to my mind can be used later. And you can do the same thing. You can use something you've written, just don't throw it away, because you never know when you might use it. Now, does anyone have questions? You have to turn yourself on if you.
Yeah, y'all go ahead and unmute if you want to. And if you have a question for Lena, this is the time to ask it. Give everybody a minute to unmute. Anybody have a question, just raise your hand.
I do have a comment.
Sorry?
A famous novel, and I can't think of it right now, but it had Becky Sharp in it, if you've read that one. And you talk about
Okay, I lost you. Shoot.
the coach when she's leaving this finish. Somebody you like or admire, and they don't show up.
Anybody else? Did you have a question, Gary, or just your comment?
Just a comment
Okay.
on part one where they have it put of the reading list at UT that we were supposed to read, so I read the damn thing. But
Yeah.
I kept